Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with Sharon, of course, our friend from WellSpan. How are you there, dear?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just to make sure we're all up to speed, Sharon works at the Wellness Center at the Ephrata Hospital, part of the WellSpan system. And she is, well, I was just going to say expert because she is. She's an expert on all things addiction. And so we've been sort of talking through different kinds of addiction, what is addiction, and all that kind of stuff. Today, we're going to talk about nicotine. So this is one of those things that I think everyone just turned us off because uh, people smoke.
Yes.
People smoke. What are you going to do? People smoke.
Yes.
Um, it's a part of your people's families. It's part of people's culture. I'm telling you, the media still in a lot of places makes smoking cool. You're a part of the cool kids, the cool adults, the in crowd when you smoke. So and I think, I'm not saying this is how I feel, but this is what a lot of people out in everywhere will talk about. Like, yeah, you shouldn't do drugs, man. Drugs will kill you. But then they smoke cigarettes or they chew tobacco or whatever. And so how do we wrestle with this?
I think part of it is, a huge part of it is starting to recognize that nicotine is a drug. It's an addictive drug. And Dr. Mark Gold at the University of Florida's Brain Institute did some really, really interesting research. And the end of that research, he found that nicotine was more addictive than cocaine, and nicotine was more addictive than heroin. So when the brain gets hijacked by the drug use, and the half-life of nicotine is very short. Half-life means even though the drug's not there, the effects of the drug stay in your system. So that's why people have cravings, urges so quickly, because the nicotine is leaving their system and they are going into withdrawal. So they panic and don't want to go into withdrawal, so they go have another nicotine product. And nicotine is nicotine no matter what the delivery system is.
Right, whether it's chew or whether it's a cigarette or whatever. Yeah.
Cigar, pipe, vaping, all of that, electronic cigarettes, it's all a delivery system, but the drug is the nicotine.
It's interesting when you talk about the addiction part, and I will just share this story because when it happened, when I heard the story, I almost didn't believe it. I was sitting after dinner with my mom and my mother-in-law several years ago. My mom smoked when she was in her early 20s, and she quit smoking when she got pregnant with me. And this was easily 25, it was about 30 years after I was born. And she and my mother-in-law were sitting after dinner. My mother-in-law had smoked a lot of her life and had just quit. And we were really like celebrating that she had quit smoking. And as we were sitting there, just the three of us, we just finished a fantastic dinner. And my mom said, wow, I would do anything for a cigarette right now. Mm-hmm. In my entire life, she had never talked about smoking, ever. Ever did I hear her talk about that. And my mother-in-law went, yeah. And I looked at my mother and I said, what's going on? You haven't smoked in 30 years. Mm-hmm. And she said, I know, but I could have a cigarette right now.
And that is a wonderful way to hopefully help people understand the power of the addiction and how it changes the brain. And the brain creates what's called dendrites to compensate. Nicotine is a very toxic substance. I mean, there have been, actually in Germany, there were 3 teenage girls that committed suicide by overdosing on nicotine. It was deliberate. So
Wow.
it's very toxic. There are only two living creatures that will ingest nicotine. One is the human being and the other is the tobacco worm. There's been a lot of research done with rhesus monkeys, and the monkeys puff their cheeks up because they're trying to get them to smoke, and they puff their cheeks up and make their lips tight because they don't want that toxic substance in their body. So when research was done on animals, it was really, it's you can look it up on, I'm sure, on YouTube
Yeah,
now.
yeah. That's fascinating because you would, I mean, I guess we would just assume that, why would you not? So
Yes,
the tobacco worm in humans.
yes, yes. So over time, when we start smoking, we don't start smoking. Usually, our first cigarette is our first cigarette, not our first pack,
Right.
because our body is getting used to the toxic substance. But as the body's getting used to it, the brain is not equipped with receptors to take up all that nicotine. So it grows new receptors called dendrites. So then you need more. You're building tolerance. Where now you had one or two, you want three or four, and then you had a pack, now you want 2 packs. I mean, the most in all my years of doing tobacco treatment work, tobacco use independence treatment work, I had a guy that smoked 7 packs of cigarettes a day. He was a long distance truck driver and pretty much chain smoked. 7 packs. He did quit. He quit using Chantix, coming to my classes, and doing some support outside of the classes through a 12-step program. But it took him a year to quit and stay quit. Because the brain wants that chemical. The brain's saying, I want it, I need it, I'm going to die if I don't get it. Now, your conscious mind isn't telling you that. So what happens is all those dendrites are there. You quit smoking, those dendrites don't go away. So what we teach in relapse is hunting season's upon us. That's a big relapse time. Why? Because hunters put all their equipment away. You know, they put them in chests or closets or whatever. They get them out. Now they quit smoking between the end of last year and this year. They open up that chest and they get that wave of smell from the clothes that are in the chest from when they smoked. It wakes up the dendrites, and the dendrites go, yes, I'm gonna get some, all right. And at that point, without awareness of what's going on, the urge to smoke is so great that they end up using whatever their product is. And a lot of times it can be chew. And they'll tell you, I don't know why I did it. Well, they don't, because it happens in the brain.
Wow.
And there are brain scans that can show some of this. Dr. Victor DeNoble, does a lot of, used to, he might be retired now, education. He was recruited by the tobacco industry to develop a nicotine-free cigarette because they knew it was addictive. They knew that nicotine was addictive in the 40s. But they lied about it. They lied about it. So he was hired to develop the cigarette, and then he was told, we aren't going to do this because if it's not addictive, no one's going to want to do it. So you're basically out of a job. So long story short, he has a very interesting story. He became one of the chief witnesses in the tobacco trials and has just done phenomenal research. He's a phenomenal scientist, which is why he was recruited by the tobacco industry.
Huh.
So very interesting story, but if people are really interested, there is so much research that people just don't pay attention to. In the 80s, Kelly, in the 80s, there was a researcher at what was the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey. That's now part of Rutgers, but back then.
Yeah.
And they did research to show that if people have another addiction, alcohol or opiates or one of those addictions, and they quit smoking or using nicotine, at the same time that they quit their other drug use,
Right.
at 1 year, there was a 60% abstinent rate, which is unheard of. It almost
Oh.
doubled the abstinent rate, because what we know, nicotine keeps the receptors for drug use open in the brain. So it really is what's going on in the brain. And it's so much a part of our culture, so much a part of our society.
Yeah.
It helps fund a lot of wars, the Revolutionary War.
Yep.
I mean, I don't see us getting where we could get because of the power of the money that's brought in by the sale of tobacco products. It's a big business. 430,000 people die. We were at 450. My latest research shows that we're at 430. But even that is skewed because cause of death wasn't always reported as smoking. It was reported as lung cancer, kidney cancer, heart attack.
Right.
But the reality is those diseases were caused by smoking. So it's not accurate. My dad died of kidney cancer. And the type of kidney cancer he had was from smoking. And even though he had quit for several years before he died, the doctors that he was treating said it was most likely caused by his tobacco use. His cause of death was kidney cancer.
Right.
So
this, and is this the biggest thing that people are addicted to in at least the United States? Are there more people who smoke than do any other addictive thing?
I can't answer that.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just sort of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, I was trying to think of some research that I've read about that, but I think the answer is yes. I am not sure.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, it seems logical, but I don't want to make huge assumptions about that.
Well, it's okay. I hear a lot. Well, at least they're not doing drugs.
Right. And I've when I used to teach high school, I've talked to parents about that, and a lot of them have said that it's okay that they smoke. I mean, if I have a student that comes in that their clothes smell of smoke, and other students or I am bothered by that smell, I've said to parents, it's come up. Just want to let you know in case there's conversation, it's come up. And parents will say, I don't care if my child smokes, at least they're not, and whatever the at least they're not is. Yeah. Or everyone in our family smokes. And you're right, it's
the culture.
No one cares about this. I mean,
they don't. Well, I don't want to say no one.
Right,
but most
right.
people don't.
Right.
Now, if we had 430,000 people die from pick a disease,
right,
our country would be up in arms.
Right.
We have to do this. All these people are dying. This is terrible. It's costing 1/3 of all medical care costs are related to tobacco use. 1/3.
And the arguments that I hear about that are, well, people choose to smoke. Those are the arguments that I hear. And in my head, I'm always like, okay, so when you're 11, I'm not, we all know that you're not making adult rational decisions. Mm-hmm. And hello, peer pressure. I mean, that's when a lot of kids start to smoke. They either want to be like somebody or they're pressured into it, which is sort of like they really want to be like somebody because they're that age. That's what you do at that age. So yeah, they were 11 when they made that decision. It didn't mean that they wanted to have a lifelong addiction.
Well, there's a lot of factors that probably go into that. The American Academy of Pediatrics has declared smoking a pediatric disease because what we know, and there was a tremendous research project done, it was a longitudinal study 25 years. Scientist in Canada, I can't imagine where he got the money to follow, but what they did was women who were giving birth, smoking women who
Yeah.
were giving birth, followed those birth children from birth weight to, I believe it was 18 years old. And what they found was when that 10 or 11-year-old had their first cigarette, they were relapsing. That wasn't initiation of use. They had nicotine in the womb.
Right, because it's in your blood and it passes through into the
Correct.
developing child. Yeah.
So what happened in the brain in utero set them up for relapse. So when the relapse happened, they didn't have to wait for all that stuff in the brain to develop. It was already developed.
That is okay. It's hard to hear that an 11-year-old is relapsing, but you're at that scientifically, that's exactly what's happening.
So then they saw higher incidence of attention deficit hyperactive disorder, people with other addictions. I mean, it really is the gateway drug, and that's irrefutable. And this is, some people don't want to believe any of this, and that's their choice. No one has to believe it.
Right.
All I would say is just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Look at the numbers. How many people are dying? And not only dying, what is their death like? Dying from a smoking related illness is awful.
It's
awful.
horrible. Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
And it's slow.
Yeah.
Nicotine addiction is like other addictions in a lot of ways. In one way that it's very different is the effects don't show up right away.
Right. Right.
You take a hit of another drug, you're high, you overdose almost immediately. Where nicotine is, hey, I can have more. This is cool. Not hurting me 10 years down the road, but now it's too late because you've been smoking for 10 years.
Right.
A friend of mine from grade school was just diagnosed with lung cancer. And this person quit years ago. Now, there's always other extenuating factors that go along with it.
Right.
And it's not a guarantee that if you smoke, you're going to have this disease.
Of course, because we all know that story of somebody's fill in the blank relative who's, lived to be 214 and smoked and drank and had bacon. Right.
Yes.
Right.
If you want to rationalize your behavior, you're going to find a way to rationalize it.
Of course. And I think that that's what the point of this series is that we're presenting good quality, scientifically researched information to let people know so that they can make a better decision.
And part of that, I hope, is those better decisions involve learning stress management, coping skills.
And that there are people to help you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And right now in the world of tobacco, there are so many free services available for people. I mean, Quitline, there's Text to Quit, all these text programs. There's Nicotine Anonymous, a 12-step program. Here at WellSpan, we have a free program. Right now, it's all virtual, but it's still a free program. And I know that some of the other hospitals have free programs. So there's absolutely more help. Now, a lot of insurances will pay for the nicotine replacement products. They'll pay for Chantix. Not all of them,
right?
But if people want to quit, there is support and help for them to do that, because a lot of people can't do it alone. Some can.
Right. And like we say this every time, addiction doesn't mean you will die from the addiction. There's hope in a lot of ways.
Yes.
So that's the perfect place to end this. Like we start and end almost all of these is, yes, this is a problem, but there are ways that you can mitigate it. There are people who will help you quit. And it's it's even financially doable because most of the time it's free.
Addiction is a I problem. Recovery is a we effort.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to promote, is that it is we, you're not alone.
That's perfect. Sharon, as always, thank you times a million. We'll see you next week, all right?
All right, thanks. Have a good
Bye.
week.
You too.
Bye-bye.